Hi, my name's Alethea Espeline. I know it's probably difficult, but there's a lot of people in our class that have kind of silly, hard to pronounce names, I guess. But this is my LP01 assignment, creating a methodology. So I want to go over the case study that we read about of this anonymous company, and we can figure out where they went wrong, what we can do, and just get a little better ideas of how to proceed. So first we'll explain the case. So the president issued a statement about the inevitable need for a project methodology. So about a year ago, he announced that we needed to have project managers to help make these projects go a little better, and how we needed a methodology because a lot of the a lot of the bids they were losing because they didn't have a standard practice or standard methodology as all their competitors did. So this was a need in order to help the company grow. Apparently he's been asking for more than a year, and he's tired of the excuses. So some managers, I felt, are afraid of losing their power, and he states, and I quote, "That may be true, but losing some power and authority is obviously better than losing your job." So that kind of struck me as an ultimatum. You do it, or I will find someone who will. Then he gave a new deadline for 6 months for a methodology, which, since it's been a year, I think 6 months is pretty good. The consultant that was brought in last year also touched on the topic of getting an enterprise project methodology, having something that's standard, something that everybody can rely on, that maybe can be tweaked here and there, but this is what you use all the time. So the project managers knew that getting the executives to sign off on this methodology would be pretty difficult, but they took on the task anyway because that was what they were there to do. And then the PMO that was formed was put to report to the CIO, and that kind of made the other executives nervous because the CIO would now have more power than the other executives. But here are the 5 steps that the project managers used to create their methodology. Oh, not too far. So the first one was to establish life cycle phases. Many of the interviews that they had with the executives wanted 10 to 12 life cycle phases, which at each life cycle phase meeting, the project managers would have to have paperwork to show where they stand and the status, where they're falling, all that. And the project managers felt that if they were to do 10 to 12, then they would spend more time doing paperwork rather than doing the project. So they pared it down to 6 life cycle phases. Number 2 was to establish policies and procedures, and should they do formal or informal. So the decision was put that informal was better because there's many unique clients that have different ways that they want paperwork or different ways that they want to approach the project, and the project managers each have their own style. Number 3 was to develop a set of standard templates. This would allow the project managers to choose what best worked for each project from the standard templates. So this kind of relates back to the policies and procedures, but now we have a set of forms, templates, graphs, status reports that all have the same header, have the same style. Then we go to capturing best practices with the project methodology. So the client stated that on their RFPs that it is required that best practices are to be shared with them prior to the project close. And I think this is a really, really smart ask of the client, so they understand that if they do a project that's similar to this or use this company again, they can know where maybe they fell, maybe it went really well and they need to push higher. And the 5th one was how to educate and train the customers and the clients on how to use this new technology. The project managers felt that a 1-day training prior to the release of the project, or prior to the close, or prior to them officially handing off the new technology would be sufficient. So now let's address all of the points that we found through the case study. So a project manager consultant was brought in to explain the benefits and expectations 1 year ago. The executives didn't want a project management office because it would give one of them more power over the rest. Okay. The executives reluctantly implemented the project management office. Then the CIO was made head of the project management office. Then the executives delayed the decision to put in place the enterprise project methodology. And the president wasn't happy and gave them an ultimatum. Then it also goes through the points that we just went over from the project management office to start the process of creating the methodology. So now I want to present how would I approach the resolution to this issue. So in order to do this, I thought it was best to not take one approach, maybe to take multiple. So let's start with the project management office perspective. So the project manager should encourage the implementation of the project methodology. They should say why it's a good thing, why it would be helpful, why it is good to be competitive with your competitors and to make the money, which is the whole point of being in business, right? I know that a lot of people don't want to say that, don't want to talk about it, but if you're not there to do your job, which is then to make money, why are you there? Then they would encourage the standardizing of templates, including the RFP. So all of the reports, all the status updates, all the graphs, the charts should at least have the same feel, even if the graphs or the charts themselves are different. The headers, footers, runners, all of that should be standard. Informal policies and procedures are okay, but some formality needs to be in place. So this kind of goes back, now my thing won't move, there we go. This kind of goes back to the policies and procedures. Then making them a little more informal was better because of the different clientele and the different project managers. And then again, think about the different executives and their styles, how it works best with all three people together. Then I said the PMO should suggest moving the responsible party from the CIO to the president, simply because having one executive that has more power than the others, it kind of goes back to middle school. Well, he has more than I do. Why don't I have 4 fries and he has 5? It's a simple being fair, and maybe to eliminate some of that extra power that the executives are worried about, have the president be over the PMO for now, and then once things get regulated and things calm down, maybe at that point the company will grow, they'll need more project managers, and they can change how the PMO is affiliated. So that's my perspective for the project management office. Now I want to look at the executive perspective. So I've lost power and authority. I'm not the CIO, so now he's above me. What did I do wrong? Why was he so special and he got more power? As the CIO, well, now I have power over my peers. Well, now I'm the bad guy. Now I'm the one that no one wants to do any work with, or no one wants to go to lunch with, because I have more power. But on the flip side, now I'm not ultimately responsible for the success or failure of the project. I have a project manager that's there to help. I have, besides my teams, I have the project manager that's there to do all the reports, the status updates, and communicate with the customer directly. All I'm responsible for is making sure the project happens. That's pretty nice. And now I can focus on more than one project at a time. I can take not just the one project, I can take all of these, because I don't have to do all the reports all the time. And now I can start collaborating with the other executives. Rather than being afraid that the CIO has more power, maybe I should start collaborating and work with them more. So now let's look at the final perspective that I put together was of the president. So, he's already pretty frustrated that he asked for this to happen a year ago and nothing's happened. So he's trying to figure out what their problem is, and if he needs to hire all new executives, or if threatening them, ultimately, giving them the ultimatum, is going to make them do what he asked them to do a year ago, and hopefully in the next 6 months, things will pick up and happen for the company. So his perspective is, we're going to implement the methodology. That's it. Done. I don't care. It's going to happen in the next 6 months. Whether the executives sign off on it, I'm going to sign off on it, and that's just what's going to happen. Then we will become more standardized. Everything that we send out, from the RFPs to the final project and all the reports, anything is all going to be standardized. This is looking towards the future, because all the big companies we're losing bids to are doing this. So we need to do this. So now what I want to do, there were questions at the end of the case study that I'd like to review and kind of give a little bit better perspective on what I'm thinking. So the first question is, what can you determine about the corporate culture from the fact that they waited this long to consider the development of an EPM system? So I answer this question with questions. Maybe they're afraid of change. Maybe they're afraid of losing power and authority, which we know the answer to that. They don't want to appear to have more power than the rest. I mean, I think that's a pretty good answer to that question, even though it wasn't more questions. Number 2, can a PMO accelerate the implementation process? Well, I would say yes. Like I stated before, having the project managers, the executives now can focus on more than one project. They can focus on actually doing the project rather than doing the paperwork and managing the project. They can just manage the people and do the work. And yeah, that's all I said, I'm sorry. Number 3, is it acceptable for the PMO to report to the Chief Information Officer or to someone else? You know, that's kind of a hard question. The company that I work for, they have an IT PMO, so it's an IT project management office. There's also project managers within my area, and I work for the data and analytics organization of a major healthcare company. So we have project managers in IT PMO that deal with implementation. We have the project managers in our organization that deal with the beginning aspect, so the creation of it. And then once it's created, we hand it off to the IT PMO and they implement it. So this company sounds like they are implementing technology, possibly creating it because they have the other executives. So it sounds like the project is moving from one executive to the other, eventually going to the IT PMO. So thinking about this, if this company is simply an implementation company, yes, it's definitely appropriate for the CIO to be over the project management office. If they're doing the other pieces, like I thought, jumping from one executive to the other, meaning they're in different realms, then no, having the CIO over the PMO office probably is not appropriate. I would say it would need to move towards having just a PMO office rather than over or under the CIO. Let's see. Let me make sure that I hit all the points here. Oh, my other thought was maybe we need to have multiple PMOs. So have a PMO office under the CIO, but have one under the creation of reports, one under the analytics of the reports, one under customer contact. I don't know. I mean, just making up whatever these different executives are over. Maybe they need to have their own project managers rather than one PMO office under the CIO. Maybe have just a PMO office, but each project manager reports to the executive or specializes in the realm of the executive. Make it a little more fair, make it where the PMO office isn't under just one executive. So question 4, why is it best to have 6 or less life cycle phases in a methodology system? Well, I hit on this before, and the project managers said that it's better not to have multiple life cycle phases, simply because of the paperwork. Now, maybe it is more appropriate to have multiple life cycle phases, but they can decide that within the project and say, this one I think needs 10. And I think that would be fine, as long as it's defined in the initial project, or if there is a scope change, which this sounds like it might have, there's the documentation is followed. But then if you look at it, having the 6 life cycles means that the project is going to take longer. Not only is there more paperwork, not only is the project manager spend more time on the paperwork for this meeting, the project itself is going to take longer because they had to stop for a day or however long it takes to create this paperwork, to create it, and that's less time they have on the project to make sure that this piece is going right. So number 5. Is it best to design an EPM system around flexible or inflexible elements? Second half of the question. Generally, when first developing an EPM system, do companies prefer to use formality or informality in the design? So looking up in our textbook, I don't remember the guy's first name, but Kersner, he said this about that. EPM methodologies work best if based on templates instead of inflexible processes and procedures. So there's your answer. You want to have templates, which this company does. This company has templates and informal policies and procedures. So that's great. So an EPM system is exactly what they need, should fit right in with what they're doing. All they have to do is maybe standardize things, have a little bit of training with the executives, and then the executives can pass that down to the rest of the teams. My second half would be from our same textbook. Design the system around flexible elements, but retain the unified project management methodology from PMBOK as the outlines needed for the items in the project. So many of the templates this company is already using are from PMBOK. So using the unified project management methodology as either a baseline or as an example, or maybe using it entirely and then tweaking it to fit what they need, it's probably the right way to go. And I think if the project managers saw this would definitely put them in the right direction. So question 6, would an EPM system have the capability of capturing best practices? Well, yes. In our book, it actually does talk about how EPM systems are capable of capturing data along the way and are capable of capturing best practices. So this was addressed in the case study as well as in the book, or textbook, excuse me. So my question to further that was, so if it captures best practices and it captures data along the way, does it give a report of the data? Is it giving a highlight of the week? Hey, this item you mentioned 3 or 4 times, so this must be a highlight. This must be a best practice. So that way you're capturing it, so you don't have to go through and read every single thing you put in there, because you know you're not going to do that. And instead of highlighting them as you're putting them in, it would be nice to have them highlighted for you. I mean, maybe that's something they can implement with their company, because it sounds like they are an IT-based company that can do data and analytics, or that's something that they can bring in from outside in some kind of program. So anyway, that is the end of my discussion. I hope that I wasn't boring. I tried to look at the camera as much as possible and address you as if you were my people. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you later.